All right, here we go. And I'll just have to change the timeline to a group. Brown girl sound off. All right, here we go. All right, y'all. We are live. All right. Sorry, so sorry for the lag in time. I'm telling you, you pay for services to allow you to stream in multiple places, and they work when they feel like working, and then they don't when they don't. If you tuned in last time, you know that we were able to stream live on Facebook through the service and not through YouTube, and then this time it was the other way around. Nevertheless, anyway, welcome to Brown Girls Sound Off, where we center and amplify the voices of women of color. But look at these beautiful faces that I see. Hey, Edwina.
Hey, are we on speaker view or gallery view?
Hey, Chantel.
Please. Hey.
Hey, Nafisa.
Hey, thanks.
All right. So if you are joining us live, please let us know that you are here and type in the comments #live. If you're watching us on a replay, let us know that as well. We are super excited. Well, this episode is actually a little bittersweet, right? Because it is our final episode of season 1. I cannot believe that. I mean, anyway, that's a whole different thing, but I can't believe that this is our last episode of the first season. And also, we're going to be just kind of wrapping up this series from this month. And so we spent the month of June talking all about parenting, right? And so it was really exciting when last week we had some dads on who also wore many hats. So some of them were actually, I believe all of them like mentored or worked with youth in some sort of way. We had Terrence on, who is an assistant principal in Baltimore County Public Schools. We had William Batts on, who was a therapist, and he also works with young people. And we had Mayo on, who is a founder and operator of an amazing organization called Mentoring the Mentors, I believe. I don't want to mess that up. But what I do know is all three of these men are doing great work. Even beyond that, we have spent some time talking about, communication and ways that our identities actually influence our parenting styles and decisions and things of that nature. But, tonight, I think we want to round things out. And I want to start with a conversation, about starting with ourselves. So on social media, we talk a lot about what we see on social media, right? Because that's our lives right now. But on social media and out in them streets, people talk a lot about generational curses, right? And talk about breaking those generational curses. And so I was reading a post recently that was talking about that. I was like, oh my gosh, let's talk about that as it relates to parenting. But the question I want to throw out to you ladies is, what is a generational curse that you find to be, an issue for our generation? Just in general, I want to start with Chantel. What is something that you feel just kind of impacts our generation?
So I'm going to say a different word. Instead of curse, I like to use the word breaking generational patterns. And I say that because we only repeat what we've been taught, right? And so one of the things that in our generation, I think is the pattern sometimes of exclusivity or selfishness. And what I mean by that is sometimes we have that crab in a barrel mentality where when we arrive in how we define success in our community, sometimes we can kind of silo ourselves and we need to get back to each one, teach one. We need to get back to incorporating togetherness and bringing the others. When you go up, you bring your sister up. When you go up, you bring your brother up. You understand what I'm saying? And that's one of the things that I think will help us to become better parents, better people, and break some of these generational patterns if we could get back to that.
Ooh, and you know what I really love about using that word, because honestly, we see the words like generational curse being thrown out there, but language matters. And so I love that you said let's reframe it, because at the end of the day, like when you think of curses, you think of something someone intentionally places on someone. And I like that. I like the idea of not looking at our ancestors as folks who would intentionally impose harm, or misfortune on us. So you're right.
Exactly. That's exactly that. Exactly that.
I love that reframing. And so, yeah, I've definitely seen that in terms of that crabs in a barrel, this scarcity mindset that there's only enough for me, and that impacts us in so many ways, in terms of not just us being individuals, but I'm thinking of how that shows up in parenting as well, right? Even when I think about, this may seem like a small thing, but for some of us, let's say we find out that there's a summer camp, because summer's coming, right? And these kids been in the house with us more than they've ever been. Say there's a summer camp that's offering a discounted rate or whatever. Like, it's folks that don't want to share information like that. You know what I mean? And so what that does is it limits resources that we could be sharing within our community, because it's like we're afraid to let up off of some of that, and instead we want to keep it all to ourselves. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. Glad you brought that up. All right, how about you, Nafisa? What is a generational pattern that you feel is an issue, with our generation?
I think definitely just overworked and just feeling like we got to just bear it all and hold everything on our backs and just bent weight up, weight over, and just suffering in silence and just feeling like we got to just always have it all together. Because when like I said, I talked about this on one of our other episodes. When I look back at like my examples, my mother, my aunts, my grandmother, they look like they had it all together. I never really saw them really looking like they didn't. I'm sure they didn't. They just made it happen. So I just felt like, okay, well, I got to just make it happen too, regardless of whatever, just keep on go. So I think that that's a big thing that, pattern. I like that she said pattern. I think that's a generational pattern that we need to continue to not normalize, because it's been no longer serving us, and it affects our mental health. And it's okay to not be okay and not have to hold the weight on your shoulders. Speak up and say when you need help, and set them boundaries, and just know that you don't have to be superwoman. You can take that cape off, because we're human too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we're going to talk a little bit more in a few moments about what we can do. So right now, thank you so much, Nafisa, for sharing that. What do you think is a pattern, generational pattern, that shows up for us?
For me, it seems to be a pattern. And I just think of, like, I guess, a personal, for me, when I was thinking about the generational patterns, I thought about like within my own family and how it seems like the women, there's like this singleness that's happening. It's almost, and I don't know if it's like on purpose, but it just seems like I'm not seeing a lot of marriages happening within our community anymore. Or marriages, maybe they're not lasting. Maybe there are marriages happening, but marriages that aren't lasting until the end. And I don't know if it's, I mean, that could be for a series of reasons, right? Because everybody has their own individual stories, and everyone, deals with relationship differently. But just the relationship of like the whole family unit of the wife and the husband and the children or whatsoever is a pattern that I'm seeing less of. And so I'm seeing a lot of single women, single mothers raising children. And we see this, I mean, it's a great thing. Like, we're doing it regardless. We get the job done. But at the same time, it's like, well, where's the family units? And so I would say that is one thing that I'm definitely noticing. Even like I said, within my own family, like, I don't have a lot of representation of wholesome marriage working and lasting for long periods of times. And I look within the Black community, and that is something that I don't see a lot of.
Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. That came up on our last episode, and I believe it was Mayo who talked about it. And I love the way that Mayo framed it. He talked about almost like the partnership and being active, right? Because one thing that I know is that, whether a relationship between the parents or, the caregivers, whether that lasts or not, what I noticed, to piggyback on what you said, Edwina, what I noticed is once the relationship dissolves, then that sense of we're family no matter what. I think that is the part that feels missing for me. You know what I mean? That's the part that I'm not, is that it's not that it doesn't exist, because I know plenty of people, whether it's, maybe, one parent or the other, I know plenty of people who continue to support and be active in their children's lives once the relationship dissolves. And I know a whole lot more who are truly one parent or the other, whether it's, the dad or the mom, who's taken on that responsibility on their own, right? And for me, I think that's the part that I find most problematic, because it goes back to that post that I shared with you all in our group chat. Remember, I said that my cousin, who's in this group, by the way, who has shared this series of posts, who talked about, our ancestors, previous generations, actually sticking in relationships that were not just like not serving them, but were unhealthy. They were unhealthy, and so that's one of the reasons why. It's not the reason why, but that's one of the reasons why, so many of them, you saw many of them lasting, forever. And a lot of times, from what I've seen, it was because the mom was the one who wasn't working, so she was financially dependent on the dad. And so what I think, and this is to affirm, especially all those mothers out there who, and or fathers out there who had, for one reason or another, had to dissolve a relationship, right? Because it was unhealthy for them. And so what I'm seeing is now more mothers are working, right? They're working outside the home pre-COVID, right? Most of them are working outside the home. And when you look at, and more women, especially Black women, are actually pursuing higher degrees in education. So we're more educated, we're more paid, and so we're no longer as dependent on the other parent. So from my perspective, I think that is part of the reason. I do think the other part of the reason is something that Nafisa was it was tangled up in what Nafisa was sharing around, like, things that we go through as parents, right? And kind of holding it all in. And so as much as we don't talk about mental health or prioritize mental health as we should, there is definitely a trend in the upward direction, in terms of us seeking mental health, resources and having access to mental health professionals. And so I think that's also playing a part into, whether families are sticking it together. They're like, wait a minute, this is actually causing me more anxiety or depression or whatever the case may be. But I just wanted to share that, because I do know this episode isn't all about that, but it is related. We've talked in the past about, especially in our community, there being a stigma around single parenting and around divorcees, and people feel ashamed to, one, walk away, right? And two, tell people when they've walked away, and then three, seek help when they're going through something, related to walking away. But thank you so much for throwing that out there. And if you're watching, please let us know your thoughts on this topic. This is one that, we could talk about all day long. So speaking of these generational patterns, ladies, that we've thrown out there, and even maybe more that haven't come up yet, how might we start to do the work necessary to break those patterns for our children? So Edwina, I want to actually bounce it right back to you first. So what do you think, we need to do as parents to start to say, okay, that stops here, whatever it is?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it always starts with the I, right? Like working within yourself. What is it that you identify who you are, your needs, your wants, and then just knowing that. And I guess from my perspective, because I am a single mother raising these children, and they're always coming to me and asking me, like, where you want to go on dates and stuff. They always ask me like that. So I think just allowing them to see that it is a choice. Like, I think teaching them like relationship is a choice, and it's a choice to make wise decisions when it comes to things like that, and having healthy relationships. And then when I do get to that point, being a role model where they can see a healthy relationship. They do have a father who is married again, so they get to, you know, see that within the household. But I know like they're looking at their mother, where I feel like it's the mothers that seem to be more of like a concern when it comes to, you know, being in those healthy relationships. And I think it's very important for them to see, one, that it is not something that I am dependent on, that I'm strong by myself, that I'm able to, you know, provide for myself and for them, that when that person does come along, this is that I'm not closed off to healthy relationship, but that I will share that with them when I feel that I've come into a space where someone has shown me that they value the things in which I value, and they're able to, you know, walk that walk with me. And so I think it's a modeling process that children need to see, and it's something that I'm willing to do. But at the same time, I'm willing to show them as individuals, you know, that they can live their lives as individual and grow from there. And then, you know, if someone comes along, they can then partner up with that person.
I like that you said that, sis. I mean, like, seriously, I love that you said that, because I think, like, kind of going back to what we were just talking about, because of that stigma, I think that a lot of us, especially ones with kids, right? Especially ones with kids where they've seen us, you know, with their, you know, parent, their father,
Yeah.
you know, we can tend to like go from relationship to relationship and show them all the wrong things in that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
love that what you're saying is, you know, your kids have seen you with their father. My kids have seen me with their father. We, you know, are still, but anyway, and and so they've seen that, and that's what they're used to. And now they're seeing me alone. Your kids are seeing you alone. But I think it's important for them to see you then intentionally choosing your next partner, right? So they're going to be going from someone they've always kind of like seen to like someone they're watching you be really, really intentional about
Exactly.
when they're old enough to really internalize what's going on. So thank you for sharing that. What about you, Chantel?
I think exactly what Edwina talked about. I think really too, breaking generational patterns is everything that we've talked about, breaking generational trauma, right? That before we can even have healthy marriages, healthy relationships, we really got to address those things deep down within us, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, that we never addressed before. That's a huge generational pattern that has to be broken. How we model healthy relationships, what that looks like, what exactly are we passing down to the next generation when it comes to what a healthy relationship looks like. And I know for me, you know, I really wanted my kids to see what a healthy mom looks like, number one, right? Before in any relationship, married, single, you have to be healthy and model what healthy and happy looks like for yourself first. And one of the things that I'm so proud of and that my kids get to see is not me necessarily be strong all the time, not me necessarily be, you know, have it all together, but they get to see me be a full, whole, and complete woman. And that's the thing that I'm most proud of. Whether, you know, when I do get into another relationship, you know, they're going to see, well, dang, mom's happy. Mom is whole. Mom knows love. You understand what I'm saying? I think all of these things that mom knows who she is, right? All of these things are so critical, especially that, again, we are modeling what healthy for self looks like first. And so as we go into these relationships, that if you're healthy and I'm healthy, we're going to model healthy, right? Our kids will automatically see what healed, healthy, whole love and relationships look like. Even on the not so good days, you know, they're going to learn it's okay to argue and disagree, but it's how you argue and disagree,
That part.
you know? And so those are the things that we are dismantling and pulling down and breaking apart so that we can pass down healthy tools, healthy skills, right? To our children and our children's children.
I have to let that one simmer for a minute. You're absolutely right, because we talk a lot about relationships, but the most human to human relationship is the one with self, right? And so I love that you said that, Chantel, and even simple things like our children, whether we're already in a relationship or partnership, our children actually seeing us still prioritize ourselves even within those relationships, right? I think that that is also important. We've talked about that during the relationship series, how it's important to not lose yourself, right? And so maybe that's also a pattern, a generational pattern that we can start to break with our kids. What about you, Nafisa? What is it, what is it that we can start to do for ourselves to break some of these patterns?
Yes, I apologize. Clearly, I'm outside at my daughter's basketball practice. So, but for me, I was just thinking about just really listening to our kids and letting them know that their feelings and their voice is important. I think starting young and letting them know that it's okay for them to, have boundaries and encouraging that. Things that we've talked about in some of the previous episodes with the parenting, like the kids don't like something, like listen to them. Don't force them to eat food they don't like, don't make them wear clothes they don't like, as long as, it's not ridiculous or behinds are hanging out or something, or indecent, let them be who they are and listen to them and let them know that their voice is important. Having boundaries is important, because I think that starts to really build within them that that self-confidence and them like feeling okay and not second guessing those feelings that they may have or those red flags or things that may come up. They start to trust themselves more when we start young with that. So I think that's important to do. And just let them know it's important to be vocal about what they need, what they don't want, what they don't like, in every relationship. And that starts with, the relationship as a parent or mother and, with your children. So I think that's definitely something that we can do to just affirm that in them and that they take that into relationships.
Ooh, sis, you hit on something for me that I see we lost Chantal. Hopefully we'll get her back in a moment. But you hit on something for me as you were speaking that came up. This was definitely well over 10 years ago, because I believe I was at my first or second public school that I was teaching at. But anyway, what came up was the fact that, especially in our community, and I know some of you who are watching are definitely going to disagree with this, because I still see this sort of pattern being passed down. But in our community, we show one of the ways that we perpetuate like silence, being silent and not having boundaries, is like when we force our children to hug and kiss relatives and close family members and things like that they shouldn't, right? And so when you talked about like the boundaries, and I've thought about like times I've seen kids when, a parent might say, go give Uncle so-and-so a hug, or Aunt so-and-so, cousin so-and-so a hug, a kiss, all this other stuff. And it's one thing if, if we know, right, like our kids have a good relationship with that person. Like my daughter, sometimes they're in that little weird like tween stage and they forget, like give hugs, that's one thing. I'm not excusing that, but what I'm saying is one thing when it's cousin, uncle, aunt, so-and-so that it's not like like you don't quite know, but because they're there, it's just like, yeah, go hug them, go kiss them. And there was a counselor at that school that I taught at that talked about breaking that pattern of not forcing our kids to show affection to folks just because of the relationship, the familial relationship that they have with that person. Because there could be, something that makes them feel uneasy. And as Nafisa, talked about, when we do that, it's like we're taking away their autonomy over their own bodies, right? And dismissing any feelings they might have. And so that's one thing that I just kind of wanted to add, that I would like to, I would like for us as a community to be mindful of who we are sort of like making our children show affection to, or making our children, allow them to touch them and things like that. I think that's really unhealthy. I see some heads nodding. So Chantal, I'm thinking you agree with that, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't let my children, if they say, Mom, we want to stay home, or Mom, we're not comfortable, come home right away. I don't make them hug people that they don't want to hug, family members included. I am very, very aware of my children's feelings and emotions, and I pay attention to how they feel when they're around people. So absolutely, that's dead spot on. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And we know that, our children don't always tell us everything. Like in an ideal world, even when we're really close with our kids, they would. But we know that not everyone tells people everything, right? We all have some things we keep to ourselves, and especially with our children, especially when they're younger, and they might not know how to put words to their feelings, right? And I'm not just talking about babies, I'm saying even teenagers, their brains are still kind of, dealing with their own hormones and stuff like that. And they don't know, do I like this? Do I not like this? Am I violate? What's happening here? And so that's something I do want to see us to kind of see. So thank y'all for that. So I want to move into like the last part of this conversation, which is really timely because I belong to another group on Facebook. Look, I'm always bringing this stuff from these groups, y'all. But this is serious. So I'm in this group, not gonna say which one, but it's about Baltimore and children, hint, hint. But anyway, so there's a poster in there who, a commenter who is a mom, and this mom posted something about like racism going on in schools. Right. So speaking of like what our children tell us and don't tell us, I don't know if you all know or if you're viewing and you've heard about this, but all those black app pages on Instagram, which is student led, a lot of students were creating these Instagram pages to speak up about the racism and other forms of discrimination, but specifically racism against Black students in our schools. Most of these schools, to be quite frank, are private schools. But they're all over the country. It just so happened that this particular group that I'm in is centered around Baltimore. And so I know that we've talked about how busy we are, and lots of parents are busy, and many times we're seeing our kids just to feed them and make sure they go to bed, and we try to get in time here and there. Like, how can we remain connected? And this is to any and all of us. Like, what are some ways that you may personally remain connected to your kid to at least encourage them to be able to tell you if something like that is going on? Because what I do know is, because I've looked at some of the Black app pages, a lot of the adults had no idea. They were appalled at the things that our children are facing in school. So, what are some ways that you think that we could, remain connected as parents?
I think being a part of the school community is a great way to stay connected as parents. I know a lot of parents don't even take the time to be a part of like PTA, community, to show up at events that happen to the school. And sometimes we miss out on knowing what's going on when we don't really come to the school building. It's more of like just a drop off, pick off, and just, keep going. So I think just being in the know of like what's going on, being a part of the school community, one, as far as like with our individual children, like I do family dinners. So we eat dinners together, and that is normally the time when I hear about what's going on. They like to talk amongst themselves, but of course I'm always eavesdropping into the conversation. If I hear something that kind of perks up my ears, I'm like, oh, so tell me more about that. And I also like to invite my children into things that I hear, so that I can like, are you aware, that I heard this about your school? Because I know for me, I have a rising high schooler who's going to a school where I heard some things, and, she's an incoming freshman, and I'm already hearing things that's going on in the school. And so I automatically join the school community even before she gets there, because I need to know like what's going on. And so having that, and I invited her into the conversation. I invited her into the Zoom session that was happening with current students and parents and administrators, and just with the district at large. I invited her into that just so that she's a part of it, and she knows that I'm a part of it, so that we can have this conversation. And I think that's very important, just to keep it like a triangle effect, where parent, students, a parent, children, and as well as the school community, so that it's something that is the norm, just normalizing having conversation with your children, as well as being a part of the school community.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like what you're talking about is an extension of last week's conversation about the village, right? And so, the other part I want to throw out there is because I do know that for some parents, they're not able, you know what I mean? Because listen, I get it. I know. I mean, I worked at a school. My child went to the school I work at, and there were lots of things that I missed, not because I didn't want to attend, but because there was a lot of responsibility I had. So, right, I want to affirm for those of you for whom, that is like the reality that happens. And that again goes back to that conversation about the village. So for those of us who are able to be more plugged in, right? For those of us who are more in the know, we going back to what Chantel said, we've got to let go of that scarcity mindset, right? So whatever information we can share with other parents, if I know that Tony, because of her work schedule, or because she has younger kids at home and she don't like bringing that baby up to the school, and so she's not able to come to the parent teacher meetings, then when I hear something, I get that newsletter and I heard through the grapevine, I need to tell Tony. You know what I mean? And so that really, really goes back to that conversation that we had last week. And I feel so passionate about it because I've worked in spaces, especially predominantly Black, white spaces, schools, where there was, one of us skin folk who was led on the inside. They're all in the know, but then there's a whole bunch of other Black parents that don't know jack, right? And so that has always like really grinded my gears. And it's not to take responsibility off anyone, but I just want to acknowledge there a lot. I don't really know of any parent who does not want to be involved, or who does not want to show their kid love, or who does not want the best for their kid. But what I do know is a lot of folks who have yet to break generational patterns, right? I know a lot of folks who have felt and who have been disenfranchised and had their voices erased, who have had adverse experiences in school systems, have felt failed, have felt othered and pushed out. And so that's where I want to put the onus back on all of us, our entire community, to, as again, going back to what Chantel said, if I'm inside that room, I might not pull you physically in because maybe you can't be physically in, but I'm pulling you in. Tony, what did you want me to bring up at that board meeting? Oh, okay. So let me, you know what I'm saying? Like that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that, that we're bringing each other into the fold and that we're supporting each other as parents. Because like I said, I can't think of one person that I know who will be like, yeah, and really with a clear mind and be like, yeah, no, I don't care what my child is. Even when they're saying stuff like that, there's a lot of trauma and hurt and, and other things. But I mean, that's just my 2 cents. What do you think, Nafisa?
I agree with Edwina. I think just really being involved. Like I know my daughter's going to Cockeysville Middle School and I already joined their IG page. I'm planning on being a part of the PTA. Just being very, very involved in the school community. And I like to have conversations with my daughter. Like I'm always like, how is your day? But not just like, where it's open and it's to say good. I'm like, okay, well, what did you really enjoy about the day? Like, what were some things that you like? Was it anything like annoying or upsetting? Like I try to like do like unpack like her thoughts and have those conversations with her and just let her know like it's a safe, she's gonna run over here to me, that it's like a safe space, and that we can have those conversations, and I'm like, oh, well, what's going on with, and I'll ask about like her friends and stuff like that. Just try to just let her know that we can just, yeah, I'm mom, but I want you to still feel comfortable to talk to me about like everything, and also one thing I think that's important is that if our kids sometimes tell us something that they did or something that upsets us, I think we have to like talk or through ourselves in that moment, because I feel like if you flip out, then you lost them. They'll be like, well, shit, I ain't tell her nothing else. You know what I mean? What happened? Nothing. You know what I mean? And then you find out later. But if it's something that try to make that like a teachable moment. And, I even have done this with my students. I might be pissed. I'm like, look, I appreciate you telling me the truth. Don't do that again. You know what I mean? And this is why, so I think it's important that we, that we do that, that as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Chantel, did you want to add anything before we start to wrap this part up?
No, I wanted to just quickly say, keeping the lines of communication with our kids open is so important. Just what you said, Nafisa, asking those questions. For me, I'm very visible. So I am very much so at the school, introducing myself to teachers. They know they see a face, they see a presence. And I think those teachers are more so inclined to kind of connect with students in a different way when they know they have that parent, right? And so even if you're a busy mom or a busy dad, like still make the effort to be visible at those schools with your children. And another thing is I'm learning, my son is in 9th grade, he'll be going to 10th. And so what I realized is you got to get involved. So, you know, if I'm on his Instagram page, I'm asking questions. What that mean? What y'all talking about? You know, what that? Okay, all right. So that's the dance. That's the song. That's what that mean. You know, I'm always wanting to learn because I want him to feel comfortable talking to me. And so that's one of the things that I would encourage parents to do is just, you know, let them know that you care about what's going on with them so that they know, okay, mom got my back, dad got my back. I can talk to them. You know what I'm saying? So definitely keep those lines of communication open and teach them how to advocate. Teach them the power of how to speak up for themselves and advocate if they know something is wrong. If they're not being treated right, teach them how to speak up for themselves. That's very important.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, our children, you know, are entering the world without us, you know, whether we want to admit it or not. You know what I mean? Like we can't be everywhere all the time. So I love what each of you have shared. I agree with all of you. I think it's so important to be as involved as you can. And if not, designate, like we get designated drivers, designate, you know what I mean? Hold on, maybe we can like create a service. Instead of calling like an Uber to come give you a ride, I'm just saying it should be a service where there's like a designated, you know, somebody. I mean, I know I'm not going to name any names, but she knows who she is, and she's in BGSO group. One of my really, really good girlfriends, and her daughter went to the school where I taught a predominantly white school. I will never forget that teacher coming to my her child's teacher came to my classroom and was like, I know you are friends with Miss So-and-so. So I just want to let you know, because she knew that her village was also inside the school. You know what I mean? And this was a parent who was very involved. So it wasn't like it wasn't, you know, an involved parent or someone who wasn't visible, but they knew that parent wasn't there at that time, but that her village extended beyond her parents and it was in somebody else, right? And so that's why I also stress that importance, because I didn't even ask that teacher. I didn't even know the little girl was crying, but the teacher came and pulled me out of class. So I just want to tell you, but because I know she's going to, you know, come. Oh yeah, okay. You know, so, but what a powerful statement though. What a powerful testament that folks knew that I was watching out for my friend's daughter. You know what I mean? They knew that you're not pulling one over. So even if her mom isn't there, her mom's going to know, because I'm going to make sure she knows. And even before she knows, I'm going to advocate for her child in the moment, right? And so that's what I want us to really get back to. I want us to break that generational pattern. And I think that's with our generation, right? I want us to break this new pattern of like, people can't say anything, you know, no, we should want folks, you know, having ears and eyes out for our children, right? So that's just kind of what I want to say. But ladies, we are wrapping up this conversation. If you are watching us live, I know it's a beautiful day, so most people will probably tune in on the replay. If you are watching us on the replay, please let us know what you thought about this conversation, in addition to the entire series for the month of June. Again, it is bittersweet that I see Alana like, yes, right, okay, all right, sis. Alana's always on time, y'all. If you know, let us know what you thought about this entire series, and let us know what you thought about BGSO so far as we wrap up, which I hope we have a glass of water, to do a little cheers in a moment. Oh, okay. I see the reach it. Is that a word? Okay. Okay. You know, 2 waters, 2 wines, perfect for me. Please give us feedback. Let us know what you thought about this season. We're going to be taking 2 months off to plan some dope content, make some tweaks based on your feedback, make some tweaks based on feedback we're giving each other and ourselves. But let's do a really quick cheers. Here, everyone, water, wine.
We did it.
Woo! Hey, clink, 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 clink. Oh, okay. I forgot I almost put the glass down. I'm supposed to sip. All right. Well, as always, it has been an amazing time. We love you guys, sending mad love to everyone. Thank you all for your support. Thank you, BGSO, for your love. Thank you for everyone who's really watched us. What I do know is that, you know, Brown Girls Sound Off was created to center and amplify the voices of women of color. And we are so grateful, not just for the community that we built around Black and Brown women, but even with our allies. So again, we've had men on. We know many of our white friends, many of our Asian friends, you know, who just show us love. And obviously our Asian friends, especially if they're women, a lot of them are in the group. But we do a lot of talking about, things from a Black woman's perspective, right? Because we're Black women. And so we get shown a lot of love, feel affirmed in so many ways from everyone. So thank you for all the love. And with that, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening. See y'all later.